It's time to talk Dallas Cowboys football, and as every week we do, we talk with Mickey Spagnola. And Mickey, before we even go forward to this week, how about let's talk about last week just for a quick second, your takeaways from that hard-fought loss against the Raiders.
Gave up way too many big plays on defense. They had to do a better job not only getting pressure on Derek Carr, but covering up some of those long passes that he completed. You had thought Deshaun Jackson had disappeared, right? And he's still a pest in the Cowboys' side after all these years. And then the other thing that stands out is how many penalties were called in the game. 14 aside, 4 pass interference calls on Anthony Brown. I just think the officials got a little over anxious throwing their flags in the game. Just let the game be played. Some of those were ticky-tack fouls. Some of them were phantom penalties. And both teams, I'm sure, were complaining after the game, 14 aside, 28 in the game, and the Cowboys ended up suffering a single-game franchise record, 166 yards in penalties. So that should tell you maybe how over-anxious those officials were, and especially deciding the game in overtime on a call that was an underthrown ball, and the receiver initiated the contact on Anthony Brown.
Yeah, and that's the one that got the most heat as far as people being outraged about that Anthony Brown call. That last one, that seemed to have generated a lot of conversation this past week.
You just can't penalize the defense on an underthrown football. Yeah. That guy had no chance to catch the ball, and he tried to go through Anthony Brown, and they'll say, well, he didn't turn and look for the ball. Well, okay, fine, but the ball was going to hit him in the back. He might not even seen it in the first place. It was so far underthrown. So I just think the NFL's got to rethink that call. It's too easy on 3rd and 18, and you're thinking, well, there's no sense throwing short. Why don't I just throw one up, and maybe I'll complete it, and maybe I'll get a pass interference call. And that seemed to be maybe what the Raiders were thinking on that play.
Yeah, kind of a rough year for the officials so far, but as we go forward, playing the Saints in Louisiana, and Saints trying to bounce back, trying to stop a 4-game losing skid. The Cowboys have lost their last 2. How do you see this one as far as who needs it the most?
Yeah, well, they both need it the most, right? I had mentioned to somebody today that, the more you lose in the NFL, the percentages are you're going to win one, and the Saints have lost 4 straight. And then I was reminded, well, same for the Cowboys. They've lost 2 straight. So they're due to win one also. So, yeah, it's 2 teams badly in need of a win. As you mentioned, playing in the Superdome is not easy, and not just because it's an indoor, but because those fans are pretty rabid there. No matter what the Saints' record is, they'll still be behind their Saints. So, yeah, it's a tough situation for the Cowboys, having to go in there and try to end not only a 2-game losing streak, but having lost 3 of their last 4, and mostly struggling on offense. They got to get this offense back on track.
COVID-19 making its ugly head again, and Mike McCarthy sitting this one out. Dan Quinn, I would think that he would be very capable leading the charge, after having the experience from coaching the Falcons.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he'll still call the defense too. But again, for his first 2 years in Atlanta, that's what he did. He was the head coach and defensive coordinator calling the defense. So he's had experience doing that. Van, I think the other problem they have is both offensive line coaches are out with COVID, and they've had to double up with some of the other guys that had other responsibilities, like Lundell Wells, the tight ends coach, is helping out with the defensive line. Ben McAdoo, who's been a consultant, is helping out with the offensive line, for both guys. So again, they've had to make some adjustments on the coaching staff to compensate for the coaches that will be missing in the game, not just Mike McCarthy.
And speaking of COVID, I guess they're expecting Amari Cooper to return from COVID protocol. But I know they were talking about him having still a little bit of a cough.
Yeah, not so fast on that one because he hasn't done anything. They haven't taken him off a reserve COVID just yet. Mike McCarthy said this morning in his conference call that if Amari Cooper doesn't practice on Wednesday, which is their last day of work before the game, then he won't play in the game on Thursday. And I think what everybody needs to understand is, yeah, you have to miss 10 games if you have COVID and you're unvaccinated, but that 10 days doesn't mean magically you've recovered totally from it. That has to do with how you feel, physically and what your condition is like. So they'll give him a good exam on Wednesday to see if he's capable of playing or not.
And while they got all those issues going on defensively, sounds like Demarcus Lawrence is coming back from that broken foot, and that can only help.
No, absolutely. And, the other thing we have to remember about Demarcus Lawrence is he played the first game and then was injured midweek getting ready for the second game. So that's a long span of games now that he's missed. He's missed 10 games. So I don't know that, he magically goes out there and is Demarcus Lawrence that we all know. But at least maybe 25, 30 snaps, maybe in pass rush situations. It'll just great to see him back on the field. The players have talked about it this week. Just hearing his voice in practice has helped out immensely.
Yeah, that's like a shot in the arm. I know he's got to get back into football shape, and when you miss, football is different than basketball. When you miss like that, you're really rusty, and you need time to get back. But going back to offensively, do you think Dak and everybody else has everything worked out for this week, because they just didn't look at themselves against the Raiders?
Well, when you're missing that many of your starting wide receivers, it makes it tough. And while they get CeeDee Lamb back, as I said, we don't know about Amari. Michael Gallup's good to go, obviously, but Cedric Wilson has missed the last couple of days of practice with a sprained ankle, so we'll find out more of what happens on Wednesday if he's able to play. Otherwise, Noah Brown and Malik Turner, time for you guys to step up. And the biggest thing these guys have to do is catch the football. They've had far too many drops in these last couple games for their liking, I'll guarantee you.
Yeah, that was uncharacteristic of the receiving corps to drop that many passes. That actually stood out because you're not used to them dropping like that. But anyway, Mickey, I'm a man of my word, and I will not ask you for a result for this game. We will just keep it moving. And as always, thanks for having you. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate everything you do, and we'll see what happens this week.
I appreciate that, Van. And maybe after the 10-day respite after the Thursday night game, we can get back to maybe having a better chance of correctly calling these games.
All right, man. Maybe we'll revisit that. Give it a shot. All right. He's Mickey Spagnola. I'm Van Tate, and we'll see you next time.